I have been so anxiously awaiting this episode. It's way too long in coming. I've got Kerry Cunningham, Senior Vice President and Lead Analyst of all things demand gen at Forrester. And this is who I go to when I need help. And I know that we're going to get a lot of value out of this episode. And Kerry, we could go a lot of places here today, but my favorite topic to jam with you on is measurement.
Yeah.
Especially the shift from lead-based measurement to account-based measurement.
Absolutely.
So are you cool to riff on that for everybody?
You know me, we could do this for hours.
I'm gonna kick it off with kind of a softball for you here.
Yeah. Okay.
Why do leads kind of suck?
There's some numbers that tell us that leads suck, for one thing. So the numbers are something like 1/4 to 1/2% of leads ever end up on opportunities that salespeople close. So in any other walk of life, if you had 1/2 or 1/4 of 1% success rate, you would think, oh, well, that kind of sucks, right? So that's the numbers. The numbers say they're not good. The other reason, more of a philosophical reason or kind of an architectural one, is that in B2B, individual people by themselves do not buy anything. It almost never happens. So if somebody's going to buy something from you and you're in B2B, they're going to bring a friend when they come look at your content. That's what's important. If they don't bring a friend, they're just there killing time.
We did a study, and 60% of account-based marketers, so people that deemed themselves account-based marketers, primarily still measured leads as their success criteria. Yeah. Why is that?
Because that is what is easy with the current systems and processes that we have. And that's also what people have been brought up on. So we have a whole generation of marketers who grew up in what we think of as the leads era. It's an era in which it's been all about getting as many leads as we can and then hoping that some of them stick. So as we said, like 1 out of 500 of them stick. So that's not good, but that's what people have been accustomed to. And it's also what marketing automation and Salesforce automation allow you to do out of the box and easily, right? The fact that 60% of account-based marketers are still measuring themselves by leads is a tragedy. And it's not a small one. It is a major tragedy. If you're spending money, if you're investing in a smaller set of accounts and hoping to get a bigger result, and you're still counting leads, chances are you're missing almost all of the result that you're producing. If an account ends up buying from you, almost always there were multiple people as leads from that account. Now, you probably did the wrong thing with them, and that's what we'll talk about probably in a little bit. But chances are only one of them ever made its way onto the opportunity, if any of them, but they were there, right? And they were there because they were part of the buying team, part of the buying group, and they're researching your solutions. Chances are you, as a marketer, never knew that there were multiple people there. If you did, you certainly would have done something different about those accounts, but you didn't. The second thing is that all the data shows that about 98% of all B2B web traffic is anonymous. So that means when you go out and you spend $100,000, $200,000, $1 million to generate demand, 98% of the response to that marketing that you do is going to be anonymous. That's just how it works, right? So if you completely ignore that 98%, you are ignoring almost all of the response. And we've got some math where you can say, of course, not all 98% of the anonymous people who come to your website matter. But when you do the math, it's certainly not less than half of them, right? So that's where I'd say at least half of your demand gen budget that you're spending is being completely wasted if you're not looking at that anonymous traffic. And then another substantial portion of it if you're not looking at the fact that you have multiple individuals who actually do fill out forms.
Let's talk about the anonymous traffic, because I always talk about, the house in high school where the parents just were kind of out to lunch and that was the basement that everyone went to. And I equate you being that house if you're not de-anonymizing your website. It's just like, it's not responsible at all.
I think that's a good word to use. It's you are throwing away most of the money that you're spending. You're just ignoring the outcome from it. You have already paid to get these people to come to your website. I mean, that's the thing that everybody's trying so hard to do. Can I just get prospects to come to my website and check out our stuff? I know we'll get them if we do that. You're already doing it and you're ignoring it most of the time. Right? That's the problem. Most of the time you don't see it. It's just, and so you're shooting yourself in the foot. If you're a CMO, VP of demand gen, and you're not de-anonymizing your web traffic, you're shooting yourself in the foot with every step you take.
Do you see that often, that it's still something people aren't doing? They're just still waiting on the form?
Yeah, I'd say 20% of organizations I talk to max are doing something about that anonymous traffic.
20% max. Wow. Think about the head start you can have on your competition just doing that.
It's astounding. So it's one, the way I put it to folks is like, you're making a bet that the 2% of people who fill out a form accurately represent the 98% of people who don't, right? Doesn't make any sense. And you would never say, you know what, I'm going to bet my entire budget on the fact that the people who just happen to fill out forms represent the 98% of the people who don't. You would never do that. That would never be a bet that you would take. But that's what you're actually doing if you don't do anything about de-anonymizing that traffic. And that is only part of the problem, right? That's a big part of it, because you want to be able to see which accounts are there looking at your stuff, but they're not filling out forms. But you also want to say, if I've got just one lead, if I'm selling to enterprise accounts, and I've got just one lead this month, you know what? That probably tells you that account's not going to be buying something from you, right? That person on your website looking. But if you knew that there was a surge in anonymous traffic on your website and you had a lead, now you have a different attitude towards that one lead. Like, okay, maybe this is the beginning of something that we really need to pay attention to. Then if you said, oh, wait a minute, here's a second lead, here's a third lead, and you would look at those and say, my goodness, there's something we really have to pay attention to here, something going on. Let's get into that account and find out what's going on. Well, I think the number of accounts out there that actually do that take that approach, is probably 5% of B2B organizations.
So I loved when I interviewed you for the book, you talked about, less than 1% a pure lead, but every time you see a second lead or a third lead, it becomes less random.
Right. Yeah. So when you think about the way that organizations buy, and so our numbers are that 83% of B2B purchases are made by teams of 3 or more.
Okay.
And almost all of the rest are made by, just think about, even in a company where, even if you were selling software to a law firm that had 4 people in it, is it likely that the 4 partners in the law firm are going to let somebody buy software to run their organization without being involved? I mean, of course they're going to be involved, and some of them are going to do their own research. But in most B2B situations, there's a buying group that's at least 3, but most often 5, 7, 10 people. And our research shows when we ask people about their involvement in purchases, they tell us they have about 17 interactions with vendors. So irrespective,
17 across each
of the people.
Each of the people?
Yeah. So, some people are certainly having 30, but even the person who isn't very involved in the buying process is going to have 10 or 12, right? Everybody today does some of their own research. It's extraordinarily rare that somebody would be involved in a buying process for something that's important to their company, where they wouldn't at least go to your website and look at what you've got, right? Now, if it's the CEO or a VP level person, they may not fill out the form, right? But they're going to look at what they can look at without filling out a form. And they're going to send other people to fill out the forms and get the stuff that they can't get otherwise. So the way that we value things is we say, oh, the person who fills out the form, super, super valuable. Well, it's probably the reverse. It's
right.
And that person filling out the form is the tip of the spear, right? If it matters, if the person filling out the form matters at all, it matters because they're the tip of the spear. They're not the spear itself, right? They're the person who's filling out the form for the rest of the people who didn't yet. But if they're just the only person and the only activity you can detect, you should probably forget about it. I mean, unless you have nothing else to do, right? It's probably just somebody who's got some time in their hands. So that part's really important. The second and third lead part that's just really critical is, every time we ask our clients to go look at their lead data, they find that, oh yeah, you know what, there were multiple people there. Maybe one person scored up and became an MQL, but we had 2 or 3 other people who didn't quite do enough to become an MQL. Right? Well, all of those people are part of the buying process. If you look at the fact that there's 5 people from this account and only 1 from this account, you would say immediately, all right, here's an account with 5 people looking at our stuff. We got to do something about that. Right? But it's happening today, and you just don't know it because you're not looking at the data. So that's one thing. The second thing is, what happens in most organizations today still is, if I get a lead from an account that I care about, I would, that lead scores up, it becomes an MQL, we send it off to the SDR team, SDR qualifies it, sends it to sales. Okay, that's great. What happens next week when you get a second lead from that same organization? Now, the first lead you treated as gold, right? You put the machinery in place to qualify that thing, and if you got lucky, it worked out. The second lead that comes in, it goes up, it qualifies as an MQL because marketing automation doesn't know anything else.
Mm-hmm.
The SDR looks at it and goes, hey, wait a minute. We already have an opportunity for this thing. I'm an SDR. I get paid for qualifying opportunities. We have an opportunity for this. I can't get paid. That thing's going in the trash. Now, they mark it as disqualified, and then 2 bad things happen. One is, that looks like a bad lead, disqualified lead for marketing and marketing stats. So if my first lead gave me 100% conversion rate from lead to opportunity, my second lead from that same organization cuts it down to 50%. So now my lead conversion rate's gone down. Now, have I done a good thing by attracting and engaging a second member of that buying group? Of course I have. Is it as good or better of a signal than the first one? Yeah, it's better because it tells you that the first one's legit, right?
Right.
Doing something. But my conversion rate goes down, and a marketer might be forgiven if the marketer thought, well, I need to prevent that from happening again, right? I don't want to get a second lead from that account. That would be really dumb, but logical according to the way that we do things today based on leads. The other tragic thing, and we have some really great customer stories around the difference that this makes now. But the other tragic thing is that sales never finds out that there was a second or a third or a fourth person from that organization.
Even though that makes it a lot stronger a signal, less random.
Yeah. So sales never finds out about it because it doesn't get past that BDR barrier. Mm-hmm. So it never gets over to Salesforce. That name never gets to Salesforce. The sales rep never finds out about it. And so they can't use it to prioritize. The sales rep won't know that this one's hot and this one's cold because every one they get looks the same. And they're probably going to have to go out and construct that buying group themselves and figure out who all of the people are involved. And we know who they are because they came to our website and they filled out forms, but we're not going to tell them. Right? So this
whole thing totally breaks our traditional inbound motion.
Yeah.
So do you tell people that they need to now have more of an outbound motion? How do you consult them through? Because there's the measurement thing, which we're going to get back to. Yeah. But there's also the process part of it as well.
So, the inbound thing is broken, but it's not broken because it's doing the wrong thing. It's broken because we're using the output of it incorrectly. So if you're getting people to come to your website anonymously and you're getting some of them to fill out a form and tell you who they are, that's the right thing to be doing. And, I always ask this question to folks who are about to do ABM or pilot ABM or something. So what is that going to look like on your website, in marketing automation? If you're good at this, if this works, what's it going to look like? And what's going to look like is more traffic, anonymous traffic, and more leads. How are you going to capitalize on the fact that that's happening? That's the question. And that's what's missing. So the good news is it's very broken today, the way it's happening. But the hard part, getting people to your website and filling out forms and all of that stuff, is not the broken piece. The broken piece is just what you do about it. And that's actually much easier to fix. It's process. It's not super elaborate, sophisticated to fix.
You talked about one of the reasons that account-based marketers are still tracking leads, and that this is the way it's set up, this is how the process is set up, this is how compensation plans are set up for BDRs, et cetera, et cetera. And I think all that is true. But I also think there's a even bigger challenge when you think about CEOs, CROs, CFOs, boards who may or may not totally understand marketing, may or may not understand account-based marketing, and the only thing they've ever been trained on is leads. How do I go to them and say, yeah, I know that's what you're used to and we've set up to do, and it's really it's not that great, so I'm going to kind of call bullshit on myself and track something that's totally different? How does that conversation go? Because that's where I see people struggle.
100%. So, and we even see that after the fact. One thing is, last year at this time for a European summit, when we actually went to Europe, I did a presentation called "Why Your Falling Lead Conversion Rates Are a Good Thing and What to Do About It." Right. So, and that presentation was about this thing that we just talked about, the fact that you got multiple leads. They're hurting your conversion rate. They're really good for your business. We just need to separate that. So we've written about it. We're doing presentations about it. This year, we did another presentation that said marketing sourced attribution, your pathway to irrelevance. So one, if you're watching this, listening to this, and you're facing that, we've got research, we've got presentations, we've got lots of ammunition to take to your leadership and say, look, we're thinking about this the wrong way. We also have lots of really good customer examples. And one of our favorite ones is a mutual client of ours, who brought you guys in, brought in some other technologies as well, did a great job, but their organization wasn't set up yet to recognize that you can get really great prospects through intent alone. Sometimes you can get great prospects where you have a big intent signal and maybe somebody came and chatted on your website. Good enough. Let's get that to a sales rep, right? But they were really stuck on marketing source metrics. That's what the senior leaders in the organization knew, and that's what they trusted. So because they didn't address that in advance, we had to go back and make that case. Take our presentations, take our research, and say, look, this is not making excuses. This is what you should be doing. So it can be done. It's much, much better. If you're launching down the ABM path, one of the first things you should do is start preparing the folks above you in the organization that there are many ways that marketing is going to produce value and deliver pipeline that don't involve MQLs and MQL and conversion, right? And that the channel of those leads coming into your organization that doesn't involve an MQL is ultimately going to swamp the MQL pathway, right? And so the best time to make that case internally is when you're planning the start of ABM or when you're launching a pilot or something, not after you've done it, because then people are just going to ask you, well, why don't I have MQLs? And now you've got to make up a story. But we've got tons of customer stories about the value that this is producing. Tons of research to say this is the thing to be doing.
So let's talk about better metrics, because you can't just bash on something and not provide something better, right? And I talk a lot about being a recovering salesperson, a recovering sales leader, and what drives bookings, what drives revenue? It's conversions, cycle times, ASPs. Ultimately, those are the things that we're, productive reps, things like that. And I think finance teams, boards, CEOs understand those metrics empirically better anyway. So how can marketing maybe latch on to more meaningful metrics, in your opinion?
Yeah, well, the way that we built the demand unit waterfall is really designed to provide the overall framework for that. It starts with, especially if you're buying into the account-centric idea, and you should be, because that's what B2B is, then you've got to know how many potential opportunities are out there, right? So if you're setting goals today without an understanding of how many potential opportunities there are, that's a mistake. It's okay if you're a tiny software company and you haven't sold anything. It doesn't matter how many opportunities there are because everyone is greenfield, right? But if you've been around for a little while, or if the market is tight, you better understand what is actually possible and what's reasonably possible for us to do. So that's, the top of our waterfall. The first thing to know is how many organizations fit our ideal customer profile and how many of them do we think we could reasonably actually address this year. You've got to know that because that's the denominator for what you're going to measure later on. Everything is based on first that. Second, we know that for any given solution, only some of the market is going to be in market and available to sell to in any given period of time.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not, just because you've got 1,000 companies that you could sell to doesn't mean that you could sell to them this quarter or this year. That number you have to arrive at differently, right? So 2 ways of thinking about that. One is intent. Who's out there looking around? And so what we would say is under no circumstances should you miss a selling opportunity, right? If an organization is in market for the thing that you sell, you have to know about it. And the more you rely on ABM, the more important that is, right? The cost of missing one of those things goes up and up and up, right? So one, absolutely take advantage of every form of intent you possibly can to understand who's in market and use that to focus your marketing energies first and foremost to make sure that of all of those organizations that are in market today, how many of them are coming and engaging with us directly? And that's how our waterfall works. It's measure how many are out there looking around and how many are checking us out. Because marketing's job, like first most important job, is to have no gap between they're out in market looking around and they're on our website. Like, those two numbers are exactly the same thing. Marketing is crushing it, right?
So but then if I'm a salesperson, who do I call?
If who do I call from accounts or who do I call from marketing to say where?
Like how does that like? Okay, we've gotten them on because we literally have this with clients where they're so effective with their ads and their LinkedIn, and we're getting every necessary account to the website, but people don't fill out that many forms.
Yeah. So
that's kind of where it's like, okay, so now what?
Right. Well, that's where it's really important to think of all of the potential evidence that you have that an organization is in market and that you should spend time trying to sell it. Right. Mm-hmm. So first layer of evidence is it just fits the profile of an account that could buy from you. The second is, and this is one that I think is really underutilized, are what kinds of signals could you identify that suggest that this account or this segment of accounts should be in market today, whether it is or not yet, you don't know, but should be. So for instance, COVID is a triggering event that has put lots of companies in market for certain kinds of solutions and taken lots of companies out of market for certain kinds of solutions. Their overall profile as a company didn't change, but the market situations, their current business conditions did. And it's the business conditions that cause a company to go out and say, I need a new thing. Right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
We've outgrown our HR solution. We now need a virtual event platform. We never thought of one before. Now we absolutely have to have one, right? So that's the business conditions. And those business conditions are detectable in many cases, right? We can tell if companies are growing or shrinking, if there have been new regulations in a market. Mm-hmm. Technics can tell you. All of that. So that's something that is really underutilized today. We're going to be focusing a lot more on that today. Now, that usually takes some computation. So using some predictive modeling to identify those signals and what makes this set of accounts a really good target now. Then if we look at intent and say, okay, now, do we have any indications that they're actually doing something about this now? So if I'm a sales rep, and then from that point, it would be, are they coming to our website? So, are they coming to the website? Are they identifying themselves? What we're saying is sales should absolutely prioritize accounts where there's lots of evidence that they're in market and we know some people. Like that's the best possible situation for sales. But they shouldn't go straight from that. Here's what we normally see. Like marketing does a job, produces some potential opportunities for sales that have all of this nice enriched intent signals and they have contact names. But the next thing that sales does is they go all the way up to what we think of as a target stage, and they cold call accounts with just a good profile. So they have the very best thing that they could be working on and sort of the worst thing that they could be working on. And that's all that they do. But in between those two things, there's a lot of gray, right?
Right. That's where the glue, that's where that sales and marketing alignment and prioritization must come together.
Yeah, and that's the thing that we're going to be focusing a lot for our next summit, is because right now it's very badly broken. Sales does best and worst, but in between is really important. So in between
and that's where the gold is, right?
A lot of it, yeah, because there's not, well, like the best possible gold is I got all of the signals, I get every possible signal, and I've got multiple members of that buying group who filled out forms. That's the best, right? But that's really rare. So if we could fill up a sales rep's pipeline with that, but that's always going to be a small bit of it. So what's the next best thing? And the next best thing is, all right, well, maybe we don't have people who filled out forms recently, but we have a ton of evidence, third party, first party, that this prospect should be in market. They are in market. They haven't discovered us yet. That's the next best place. Now, we think marketing should be spending its money there, right? Marketing should be spending money to get those people to come reveal themselves. But where sales still doesn't have enough to do yet, that's where sales should go next, right? Sales should not be going straight up to the set of accounts that
the shiny logos that aren't in market.
Right. Yeah. And then, they're going to have to work their way up, but that's the order of events.
So we talked about the notion of a cohort analysis, which is really important when you look at ABM. Again, if I want to come and say, guess what, I'm done with MQLs, I'm kind of over them. Okay, Latané, then what are you going to do, right? And so being able to show that cohort analysis, I think, is critical. And I know you've seen some clients do that. Maybe unpack that for listeners.
Absolutely. So, for instance, just taking as an example, simple math, we've got 1,000 accounts globally that we care about. I want to know where we stand against every one of those 1,000 accounts all the time. If that's what it is, if there's 1,000 accounts, then how many of those have we already sold our thing to, right? They're not in market right now, but they're a retention opportunity, and we need to track and be doing something about that, right? Now, out of the ones that we haven't sold, and how many of them appear to be in market? How many of them are engaging with us? How many of them have already engaged? We always need to be able to see where we stand against those potential opportunities at any time. And the problem with leads is having a lead from an account doesn't tell you that you're engaging with them or that they're in market. It has to be something that's above the level of the lead. It could be at the account if you sell one thing. If you sell multiple solutions, then you got to break it down further. Right? If I sell 3 different things to a client, then I want to know how many. If I've got 1,000 accounts in my audience, then I've got 3,000 potential opportunities, not 1,000. Right? If I sell 3 things, so where are we against all 3,000? Right? One of the things that does for you, if you're in marketing, think about what a good account exec does. A good account exec has the accounts in his or her territory mapped out, and has a plan for each one of those, right? This quarter, what am I going to do? Who am I going to try to sell to, and what am I going to try to sell them? So what we're saying is that really good AE's account plan should make its way up into the machine, right? So
and marketing should bring the why.
100%.
Timing.
Yes, right. Marketing, right. So marketing needs to know what the AE is planning to do, but it should be a conversation between marketing and sales about which ones are actually happening right now, which ones are active, which ones are not responding, right? And do we need to do something differently? Maybe NA they just have a goal where they have to penetrate that account, but there's nothing happening, right? Now marketing is best positioned to help make something happen, but you can't if they're in silos, right? So they have to be together. And that really comes from, it starts with understanding who that addressable market is. What's that cohort that you care about, right? Mm-hmm. And then where are they all the time?
So let's talk Serious Decisions global audit of account-based marketing. Highlights and lowlights. What's going on with account-based marketing right now?
Well, we think there's a convergence of account-based marketing with normal demand marketing. I say normal demand marketing, but demand marketing has largely been focused on producing leads and MQLs and all of that. But we definitely see a convergence of those things happening. I think that's probably one of the biggest things. Like the best practices in ABM are the best practices for the rest of your demand, right? The difference, and we've got a great, very simple model that talks about this. But the difference is, if you've got an ABM program with 100 global accounts in it, you can't do the same things for the 5,000 commercial accounts that you do for the 100. You're not going to customize your content. You're not going to customize your approach for all 5,000. But what we just said about the cohort, I certainly can know what all 5,000 of those are, and I can know where we are against those, and I can align my marketing against the same set of accounts. So that's I think, a huge thing. So that I think that convergence is a really important thing that's happening. The other thing I think is the technology that is helping enable these ABM marketers is becoming more mature and more complete. Right, so a platform that allows you to see in the same place, and this has been a big struggle for ABM marketers, is how can I see that cohort? How can I see that here's the set of accounts I care about, the ones that are in market, the ones that are engaging with me, and the ones that we're deeply engaged with in a selling process? How do I see that all at once? How do I get away from just looking at, well, I sent X number of ads to this account, so that's what I know, or I got this many raw responses from this account, and that's what I know. I think so. ABM's getting more and more sophisticated about, well, okay, those are good metrics, important metrics for some things, but we need to have this other view as well.
I can tell you from our perspective, it's a huge focus of the roadmap is everyone needs an account-based funnel. It's got to be segmented, like you said. So your large enterprise segment is going to have a different account-based funnel from your commercial segment. And we talk about engagement being the North Star. How is marketing increasing the engagement of that buying team and moving it through that process? And what's interesting that we find over and over and over again, and I would assume you find this too, if you're doing a good job with account-based and you compare account-based to non-account-based, same segment, but these I'm gonna apply my account-based strategy to, and these I'm not. What we see is in the account-based segment, faster cycle times, much better win rates, and a lot of times 50% bigger deals. And that has a much bigger impact on revenue than my MQL that converts less than 1% of the time.
We had a great customer story at our summit in May. One of our clients that we asked them to do some analysis, kind of like what we talked about earlier, where they looked back at last year's opportunities to see if they had multiple leads from those things that were never attached to the opportunities. The answer was yes. They had a little less than 2 on average. So they decided to change the way that they process those leads. Instead of sending one lead at a time, they send a lead over, but that lead is converted to a contact. They opened up an opportunity object, and the BDRs started working opportunities and not leads. And then the really important thing they did was every time a new lead came in for that same organization, same solution, they just attached it to that opportunity. So now I have opportunities that are kind of getting bigger and bigger. The BDRs have multiple doors to knock on, so they're becoming their productivity went up 135%. BDR productivity. But what was really crazy about the results that they got was their cycle time from first lead to opportunity went from 45 days to 27.
I mean, that's significant.
And that was only part of it. This is a big sales cycle. Their sales cycle overall went from 165 days to 65 days. Because now, for those reasons we talked about, it's like now you're telling sales, hey, this opportunity, you got 5 people attached to this already. Now sales' attitude toward that, their approach, very different from this one where, nice account, but I only got one lead from that account. Might be something to pay attention to if I have time. right? This one, I got 5 people. I'm going there right now. I'm flying to that account. And then, the other thing is that now you're passing to sales a number of the people that they're going to have to track down anyway, right? Just saves them a ton of time. They can prioritize better. And that's a very simple thing to do. But if every ABM organization did that, they would be dramatically more productive right away. And it's extremely simple to do. It actually simplifies the process for the organization. That's one of my favorite customer stories in the last couple of years.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, this was a super meaty first segment. I want to get to our second segment, which is about talking nonsense.
All right.
So this one's a fun one. I am going to toss out something, and we're going to jam on it for like a minute. And then we'll go. And that's all. That's what we do. So first of all, first thing, Jay Gaines.
I got to jam on Jay Gaines. There's so Jay's an awesome guy. We miss him around the old Serious Decisions barn. We miss him a lot. Super smart, great guy. Probably my favorite thing about Jay was in every presentation that he ever did at Summit, he would drop some sort of bomb, not necessarily an F-bomb, but some other sort of bomb in a presentation that people would go, did he just say that? And the answer was always yes. He just said.
Next minute, second lead syndrome.
Second lead syndrome, yeah. So I've talked a little bit about this before. This is that one where you think the first lead that you get from that account that you love is a great buying signal, but you completely dismiss the second, third, and fourth buying signal that you get. That means your SDR marks it as disqualified, gets rid of it. If you're a demand marketer, chances are today you have second lead syndrome. You're not paying attention to the second, third, and fourth leads. You are diminishing your conversion rates that you're still being evaluated on with every second or third or fourth lead you get from an organization, and you're not capitalizing on that. So it's probably
it's an epidemic.
It's the worst thing you could possibly be doing. It's like saying, I have diabetes. Would you pass me the ice cream? Not good. It's not smart. And almost everybody's been doing it. Stop doing it. We can help you.
Love it.
Please.
Love it. Next up, I saw an awesome post that you did on marketing resilience.
The main thing I think of as resilience in a marketer is being adaptable and recognizing, being thoughtful and recognizing when what you're doing really isn't the best thing you could possibly be doing. We have a whole generation of people who've been taught that there's a certain way of doing things. Times have changed. As times changed, the resilient ones are the ones who think, should I do something different? I know this worked for me. This got me 3 promotions, but is it going to get me the next one? I don't think so, right? Got to be able to say, okay, I love what I've been doing, but I got to stop doing that.
Love it. Okay, this is one of my faves. To gate or not to gate?
Not to gate, yeah. No, don't gate.
Don't gate. But why do people still gate then?
Because they're afraid of letting somebody. Yeah, people who are gating are, again, it's what we've always done. It's how I get my leads. And if I live in a world where I get credit for marketing sourced, MQL sourced attribution, then I've got to get people to fill out forms. And so I got to gate something. And unfortunately, what you're doing is you're gating the most important people from seeing your content. And you're also denying yourself a lot of buying signals. So again, that person who filled out the form is a signal. It's not a good signal. The second, third, fourth people, if they do fill out forms, that's better. But there's all these other people who want to see your content, who are interested in your solutions. And you have to open up your mind to see that all of those people make a much more important signal than the one person who says, yeah, okay, I'll fill out the form and I'll ignore the call when it comes.
Love it. Last, talking nonsense. SD Summit.
Yeah.
We're doing it this year. What do you think? What's going to happen? Predictions.
Yeah. I am cautiously optimistic we can do it in person. I mean, the virtual events have been fine. There are some things about them I really like. And I think what we'll see in the future is a hybrid event where we have people in person and we have that great networking event for 3 or 4 days, but where we can also see content online. Like one of the great things about the virtual event is if I can't go to a session for whatever reason, I can now see it whenever I want. Everybody loves that. So we want to do that. But I have really, really big plans for Summit 21 in person. We've got a couple of really big announcements for Summit 21 already. So I am desperate to be with our folks, with our friends. Yeah.
All right. So we'll have to get our tickets now, huh?
Please. Yeah.
Are we thinking Austin again?
Yeah.
Okay. Good. I love Austin. Let's keep it weird.
Yeah.
All right. So that's talking nonsense. Now we're going to go to our third segment, Kerry, which is about you.
Oh.
I want to know what it's like to be an analyst. Like, is it a good gig? Should us marketers out there aspire to one day be Kerry Cunningham? What does it take to be Kerry Cunningham?
Let's see. A few things I'm not going to say. Okay, here's what. It is a great gig if it's a good fit for you. Here's the thing that's great about it. Like I get to talk to so many really smart, really engaged people who are doing really cool things. So, I mean, there's nothing better than that, right? So, talking to clients all day, every day, all week, and we get to see the best of things and the worst of things, and then we get to help people who are maybe not doing the best of things to do the best of things. That part is super fun. I'm really nosy and really curious. And so I love to get in other people's business and see what they're doing. So if you're that kind of person, it is a great gig for you. If you're the kind of person who likes to get your hands dirty and actually do the things, it can be a little frustrating. We often see things that you think, if I could just get over there and just do that, they should.
I just fix that for you.
But I spent, most of us in our job, we've been around for a while and we've spent our careers on the side of doing the stuff. And so for the most part, we're at the point where we're like, okay, I'm okay not doing it now. I want to help other people do it. And I want to see what everybody's doing and come up with the ideas about how to do it better.
So how do you stay sharp? Because people go to you as an expert, and we just talked about resilience and things changing all the time. Like there's no bachelor's degree in this. So how do you keep sharp?
Yeah, so it's pretty easy for an analyst in that I am talking to people who expect me to provide them, provide them value. At least a few times every day. So one, I have to be ready. When we're talking to a client and they've got real business problems, it's a humbling thing to realize that there are people who are looking to you to help them solve their business problem for their company, for their career, all of those things. If that doesn't keep you on your toes and doing your homework and paying attention, then you really shouldn't be in the business. So for those of us who have this job, we enjoy that challenge. And then in general, I think it's really important that you just be ready to disrupt yourself. Like the thing that you said last year could very well be wrong next year. And for me, looking out for the things that I said last year that were wrong is fun. It's like good sport. What was the stupid thing that I said last year or I thought 2 years ago? And that, first of all, I've got a lot of colleagues who are very happy to tell me about those, and I'm happy to tell you. We have.
But you want to beat them to the punch, debunking yourself, huh?
You want to beat them to the punch, and when you don't, they're going to beat you to the punch, and that's less fun. But it is how you discover stuff. So, to me, that's the fun part of it.
Last question here on Talking Sense. This is our standard end to the show. Colossal F up.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like the biggest one ever.
So many to choose from.
So many good ones.
Probably, one that was just a couple of years before I started with Serious Decisions. I was brought in to do some things in this organization that had about 800 inside sales reps, B2B organization. And everything they did about lead management, all of that was broken. So we spent about $350,000 or so in a quarter to build a predictive model.
Mm-hmm.
We were very proud of it, very proud of the lift that it was going to provide. We rolled it out to the inside sales teams. I think it lasted about an hour and a half, I'm going to say, before we were required to take the model and its prospects out and leave them alone. We did go back and kind of correct that, but that was a huge
So
event.
the model just went haywire, and
You know what it was?
it was like a reverse prediction.
The model predicted what sales reps ought to want to do in a world in which sales reps were not human beings, but were machines that would always engage in the right behaviors. It didn't account for the fact that they're human beings, and if they don't understand, so one, the model was a black box; they didn't understand it.
Oh yeah, you can't have that. Yep.
It was a big thing, right? So they didn't know why we were telling them to call this prospect, and they didn't trust it.
Context is huge.
Yeah, I'd say that's probably the majority of it. And then, one simple mistake, and this happens all the time with predictive models, is the predictive model said that here's a segment that should be very good for us. Our competitors absolutely crush it in this segment, right? So let's go get some of it. But our sales reps understood why we weren't crushing it in that segment, and they were the ones getting crushed by it in that segment. So the model said, hey, we're like our competitor. We should be able to sell to them.
But so an assumption that wasn't accurate.
There were some real world issues with that. Now, they're real world issues that you don't fix by fixing the model necessarily. Like, you got to fix your product and your messaging.
I was about to say, it's probably some product gap or something that.
Yeah, exactly right. Product and messaging, but you can't roll out a model if you don't know that, right? And we did.
Well, hey, resilience. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger, right?
Me too.
All right. Well, I always learn when I talk to Kerry Cunningham. I know everyone learned a lot here. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I hope everyone enjoyed it, and I'm sure we'll have you on again.
Thank you.